Welcome to the Energy for Life podcast, where we explore the future of health and wellness to help you enhance your energy, health, and purpose. Hi everyone, we're going to be talking about the secret life of the virus as a messenger to the cellular terrain. There's some super important concepts in here. Not all of these concepts are sort of well understood, and there's been a massive split in philosophy, I'd say in health philosophy, between the conventional medicine and the more naturopathic holistic views, where they've basically split virus theory to one side and then terrain theory on the other. But the truth is actually that they're both correct, and actually viruses and the terrain are completely important to each other. And so we're just going to talk a bit about that. So we'll just start with, where on earth do viruses come from? And there's this misconception that a virus is alive, that it has some life of its own. The truth of the matter is actually viruses are created inside the cell, and they actually have no life of their own. Like a virus can't get created outside of the cell, and it really can't do anything unless it actually interacts with the genetic machinery inside a cell, where it reproduces and creates other proteins and other effects within the cell. And so what on earth are they? Well, in essence, a virus actually is a messenger that basically is communicating information. Often, now you might wonder what sort of information. Now, often this information is actually information about the environment, so that cells can adapt to a potential threat, and so they can adapt to a new environment. An easy way of looking at that is within immunity. People get new information from a virus. Their immune systems adapt. They're stronger for it. But there's also another way of looking at it. If you like, for instance, if you exposed yourself to a whole bunch of environmental toxins, so for instance, if you're under a lot of respiratory distress, such as you inhaled a load of toxic smoke, your lung cells, well, they'll actually respond to the environmental stress. And one of the things that they do is they want to rid themselves of the toxin. And in doing so, they also produce RNA, or if you like, viruses, messengers, that end up communicating to other cells. And in particular, when you cough or sneeze out those RNA particles, other people can catch it. Why is that useful from an evolutionary point of view? Well, the person who catches it basically gets this signal to strengthen their lung tissue, and it gets a message, that they may get exposed to that toxin. So in normal circumstances, often, a virus can be a message to clean up one's lungs in response to a nearby environmental threat, such as toxins, energetic or emotional toxins. And in a way, you could look at the flu virus as a software upgrade, which is activated, with more often with people who might need it more. Now, you might also be thinking, aren't all viruses bad? Well, or are all viruses good? Well, no, there's actually, and this is pretty incredible. So actually, I'll start with a different fact. So there's 38 trillion bacteria in the body. I think there's generally 3 to 4 trillion cells in the body. 38 trillion bacteria, i.e., with more bacteria than our own cells. But this is where it gets exponential. There's 380 trillion viruses, or in other words, sort of strands of RNA in our body at any one time. And that's called, instead of the human biome for bacteria, that's called the human virome. Now, actually, at this moment in time, we really don't know what all those 380 trillion viruses are doing. However, what we do know is many of them, probably most of them, are essential to our own life cycle, and they're absolutely essential to the cell. And in fact, if you went on a war with all the viruses on your body with antivirals or something like that, and you wanted to eradicate the virome, you'd be eradicating this RNA communication system. You'd be eradicating the machinery inside your cell that replicates and creates proteins. And generally, you get pretty ill from doing that, and likely die. So, this idea that all RNA, all viruses are bad in the body. Just not true. I mean, if there's 380 trillion viruses in the average human being at any one time, obviously they can't all be working against us. Now, in actual fact, there's been studies which actually can't tell the difference between a virus and an exome. Now, you might be wondering what an exome is. Now, they're getting pretty popular in stem cell circles, and stem cell world. Let's see, I'm sure most people would have heard the amazing promise and some of the amazing results that people get in stem cell therapy. Now, because generally regulatory, but because stem cell therapy has been under a lot of pressure, some more innovative companies have been just looking at the exomes. So instead of injecting with stem cells, they're just injecting with exomes. Now, exomes are basically RNA messengers, and they found they're getting very similar results, if not the same results, as if they actually just use stem cells. So instead, you can just use the messenger instead of the stem cells. And what's pretty interesting is these studies basically can't tell the difference between a virus and an exome. In fact, I think there's one study I found it couldn't tell the difference between a flu virus and an exome. So then you have to start asking the question, is in some cases a flu virus an upgrade? Is it communicating information to people's cellular terrain to clean out the terrain and make the body healthy? Quite possibly. So, and you get this idea this idea has been long established in naturopathy, where if you fast, at some point in time the body ends up creating these flu-like symptoms to basically reverse disease. In other words, when you give the body a chance to detoxify and heal, it excretes toxins, and along with these toxins, it also includes these messages, you call them exomes, viruses, RNA, all the same, that create these flu-like symptoms. So it's very symbiotic, and all happening at the same time. All of that sweat and all those high temperatures, they basically that you might get when you have the flu. Like generally, when you got the flu, once the flu has passed through, if you depends a bit. If you suppress your flu, you'll suppress your temperatures and all of the sweat, and you don't rest. Then basically you can feel worse for a while because you didn't allow your body to expel the toxins. Often, if you actually go with the flu and you support the body's high temperatures, the excretion process, you eat a little bit less, take plenty of fluids to help the body to detoxify and get through its healing crisis. You can often feel considerably better. A week or two past the time you have the flu, and you actually have an increase of energy. It's pretty interesting. Of course, if you sort of go the other way and take a load of things to suppress the symptoms and carry on, you don't feel like that. Actually, it can just hang out for ages and not be too good. Now, you might also be thinking, well, why on earth do some people die from the flu? Well, the people at the most risk, they're generally over 70 or older. They have at least one other condition, and they're generally on a whole bunch of medication. So how's their terrain looking? Well, with these people, when the body tries to adapt by increasing metabolic excretion, if the terrain is too toxic, simply the body's systems, they've become overburdened, and it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so you have to ask, was it the virus and their medications and their lifestyle and their pre-existing conditions, that might be the cause of their death, them getting seriously ill from the flu, or was it their toxic terrain? Most likely it's their toxic terrain, but of course, that's never actually put in the statistics. In the statistics, it's always the virus is the thing that kills people. And a way to help, and whether you agree with sort of virus or terrain theory or not, if you focus on the terrain, i.e., you focus on having healthy cellular terrain, having a cleaner body, that's only going to be good, and it's only going to improve nature's own communication system, i.e. this viral RNA system and immunity, etc. Now, it's like immunity and terrain, they're very linked. It's not like there's often well, often in all sorts of sort of circles, we think of, oh, there's the body's detox system, and that's the kidney and the liver and, you know, the digestive system, etc. And there's the body's immune system, and, you know, people think to you either like target the immune system, support the immune system, or you support the detox system. No, no, no. They're actually all completely interrelated. And if you actually support the body's, well, if you support the cellular terrain, you are by definition actually supporting immunity and the detox system, you know, and all of these things at once. So terrain is a really, really super, super critical or important idea. Now, you know, now I'll say this, but it isn't to say that there aren't some viruses that are truly bad. And probably the most obvious example is Ebola. However, the fortunate thing about it, and basically viruses that are really, really infectious, they actually fortunately tend to be pretty harmless, like the cold and flu, and have really, really low death rates. However, viruses that are the most deadly, like Ebola, they're actually incredibly, incredibly hard to catch. So, you know, fortunately, the human virome is, you know, mostly full of good messages, good RNA, and, you know, the ones that are really, really deadly, super, super hard to catch. So it's a bit of a misconception, you know, especially with 2020, depending what year or time you're watching this video. So you also might be thinking, what's the main component of the cellular terrain? Well, actually, pretty simply, it's structured water. I mean, it's the same question, what's the main component of the body? It depends how you look at it. 80% of the body, I think it's by weight, is H2O. But if you look at it by molecule, 99% of the molecules in your body are actually H2O. And that's just because hydrogen and oxygen are, you know, smaller molecules than things like carbon, calcium, etc. But either way, however you decide to calculate it, pretty much you're mostly water. And most of that water is inside your cell. It's in a gel-like type format. It has different names. Jerry Pollock called it EZ water. He called it also structured water. If you go back before that, like Gilbert Ling, who was, you know, one of the original cell biologists who wrote medical textbooks on the cell, you know, he said it. He said the water in the cell was gel-like, but basically it has structure. And when you're looking within that gel-like water that's in the cell, it's really that water that's surrounding your DNA. You know, and when you're looking from a molecular level, actually water molecules or structured water molecules are actually, you know, they're mechanically touching all your DNA. And it's that they're actually providing the sort of mechanical instructions to your DNA to produce proteins, including RNA. Simpler, and you can look at it from a simpler point of view. I mean, basically, if the cell is mostly water, and your DNA, which is the mechanism that creates viruses and RNA and other proteins, if that's surrounded by water, is that water important? Pretty likely, it's important. So how we look at it is basically the bioinformation, because water by itself, you know, it can't do anything. I mean, you basically need energy and you need information, and, you know, so if you have information, you basically have a set of instructions, and so you need energy to do the work. There's plenty of energy just from radiant heat, which is basically just photons. So you have radiant energy in the cell. You have bioinformation. You've got structured water, and that enables it to basically instruct, you know, DNA and nudge DNA in a certain way to then create, you know, help repair proteins, healthy viruses, bad viruses, etc. So basically, the bioinformation contained within the structured water in your cell, it's completely key to having a healthy cell, and in turn, that contributes directly to the life cycle of all the viruses in your body and beyond. So it's super important to ensure your cellular water has a healthy energetic structure through bioinformation, fields, diet, you know, liquids, oxygenation, and movement. or if you like, purified, mineralized, information structured water. It's really honestly, it's the basis for all biological life. And there's many analogies to look at it, but if we went out into the ocean, we've got all the plankton just sitting in the ocean. The sea is this amazing source of life, and obviously all the animals and fish grow in that ocean. And in a way, we basically have this ocean inside us, or within inside our cell, and our cellular water is quite similar in a lot of ways to the ocean water out in the ocean. And you can help yourself with that. So if you take really really pure, well filtered structured water, you can basically add like quarter a teaspoon of sea or Himalayan crystal salt to get it close to that saline type structure that you get in your cells. And then you can add appropriate bioinformation to support the terrain of the tissues of your choice. Now, another thing that is quite a concern currently is a lot of people are blaming blaming the 2020 virus pandemic on 5G. I'm not so sure that is entirely true. However, what we can say, there has been a whole bunch of studies that have looked at EMF and 5G and how they've affected the immune system. But more interestingly, is how EMF affects cellular, well, actually just structured water itself. So I'll try and describe this experiment. But within structured water, basically, if you get a very very thin tube, you shine light on that tube, and you basically end up with structured water going down this tube, and it's powered actually by the ambient heat or by the light being shined on it. If you bring up a cell phone that's emitting EMF, it just stops. The reason it stops is because it destroys the structure, and with that, basically without the structure, that the mechanism doesn't work. I think you can do a similar experiment just looking at the depth of the EZ layer. If you put EMF to it, the EZ layer reduces. If that's happening at just sort of that basic experimental level, it's not so hard to see how EMF is destroying your cellular water structure. If it's destroying the water structure in your cell, it's absolutely damaging your overall terrain. And what on earth does that do? Well, most likely, that's going to interfere with protein replication, might possibly create viruses, create other RNA strands, but it's basically going to interfere with the whole mechanism of the cell. And so, just imagine what that would be doing to your brain when you make a cell phone call. And of course, you can just imagine how it's affecting your overall terrain, how it's interfering with the overall virome and all of the life cycles that are happening between bacteria, cells, and viruses. I mean, in other words, it's basically screwing with your intercellular and, well, I could say even inter-host communication systems. So really, as much as possible, you want to keep your EMF exposure to a minimum, and then you want to use bioinformation that's been designed to support the parts of your body field that are most effective. And EMF affects certain parts of your communication system more than others, with a particular affinity, for different parts of your cellular terrain. So if you've been affected by EMF, as well as protecting yourself with EMF corrective information, you also want to ensure you spend time on correcting the energetic terrain so you can ensure cohesive cellular water structure, which in turn helps proteins to be formed correctly as part of your normal life cycle. So anyway, there's just a little bit about how viruses, or the secret life of viruses and its host cellular terrain. And really the conclusion of this is actually your cellular terrain is probably the more important, well, I would say it is actually the more important part than the virus. It's not to say that virus theory isn't true, it doesn't exist. It absolutely does, but it's a byproduct of the cellular terrain, and just it's a part of the overall communication system between different hosts, i.e., well, it could be animals or different humans. Within the body, actually, viruses and bits of RNA, they're not I don't think they're so important in a way, because you also have a field-based communication. So, there's other ways for communication to happen with the body, but they are super useful for communicating environmental signals between different people, because you can cough and excrete viruses and RNA through coughing, and basically communicate information about what's happening in the environment to others, and their own terrain gets strengthened, hopefully ahead of time, or or just ahead of time, to any environmental type threat. But anyway, the short and long answer of this is, regardless of your beliefs of virus and terrain theory, one thing's for sure: the healthier your cellular terrain is, the healthier you will be. So if there's just one message you take from that, is do everything you can to have a super healthy cellular terrain. And from that, your immune system is going to be in a pretty good state, despite any environmental threats. All right, over and out. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Energy for Life podcast. Now, if you like our show, or you want to try out bioenergetics for yourself, check out our website, energyforlife.com. Or if you're a practitioner who wants to try out the system on a trial in your clinic, go to neshealth.com. Looking forward to you joining us on iTunes or Spotify. If you enjoyed the show, please take the time to rate, review, and of course, share. Thank you, and see you again soon.